purpose of an apple tree is not to produce apples. The purpose of an apple tree is to produce more trees. Apples have the DNA that can plant and grow into another tree. The fruit of an apple tree is an apple. And so if you translate into a church environment, the purpose of the church is to produce fruit, certainly disciples who have the DNA to plant in other churches. So a church's job is to plant churches. Disciples' job is to make more disciples.
See, what's fascinating about planting a church in a small town is you'll get the question of, we've already got tons of churches. What's the point of having another church? And I would say to that person or that group of people is what's beautiful about the church is we can unify together. And what I've seen happen in Exeter is churches support us. And their support in a way is communication with me of what can we do, what do you guys need, is there space, is the questions of how is it going. It doesn't always have to be money, it always doesn't have to be the big grand. It's literally showing each other that you're for one another. Because what you'll find out very clearly is each church is shoulder tapped by God to do different things. We're one body that he brings together and works together where we all have different talents and abilities and visions and mission. Well, the mission stays the same, is to bring people to Jesus, to become fully devoted followers of him. But your vision can be different.
Something an older pastor said to me once, and he said, God has sheep on 1,000 hills. And I think a lot of churches, even healthy churches, we can get into the trap of viewing our God as a God of lack. And I know when we make budgets, we sometimes shave them down so they all balance by $50 here and there, and they can start to feel like there's not anything more, there's no more space. But our experience has been, we do things without always counting the cost, because sometimes when you do stuff in relationship with people, you don't have to think about it institutionally, but just relationally. So when we have a party with some wine and some cheese and the best of it and the best hamburgers, you're just having a party with your friends. These are God's children, whether they know it or not. And I think there's an extravagance to God, and I think our people want to be challenged in that way. So when you think of whatever your church is, you might say, hey, our budget is basically balanced, or we're in COVID and we have these stresses. I know as a church planter here that I want, even though we have so little, I want to see another church I want to be part of helping another church to be planted. And to me, that's showing faith and stepping out and saying, hey, it doesn't really fit the budget, but let's just see what God does. And I think what you'll find as your people go like, oh, this is what faith feels like. Experience has shown that churches who take that step will find, even if they lose their best, God honors that gift. God honors that. And you will find new leaders with fresh ideas, younger leaders, which we want in our churches, stepping up, maybe to be part of that church plant or to step up into leadership in your churches. So many ways renewal happens when we believe that God has sheep on 1,000 hills and step out in faith that is true.
I believe that the church is called to multiply because God is a multiplier, but I don't believe that every church is called to be a multiplying church in the sense of planting sites, like what we're doing. But what is really great is that there are churches out there that can get on board and support in other ways, right? They can get behind and cheer and pray and even give. Like, I'll just speak about Vital Point. We're investing a fair amount of resources in multi-site and starting other locations. But we're also starting to talk about how can we now support other churches that are doing multi-site. Like, there's a church in our local area that I've been really praying about. How can we get behind him and his church plant that's a year and a bit old and resource it So it's not just about us, it's now about resourcing the kingdom, right? And so I would say if you're a church that's considering, how exciting would it be to get behind a church plant and resource it so that the pastor can do the work of the ministry and not be consumed with, oh my goodness, are we going to make budget next month? And just free that leader up. Free her up so that she can do her thing, or that he can do his thing. This, or are we going to hold people like this? Because if you're an existing church that's been around for a number of years, it's very likely that there's going to be people in your community that their heart and passion lines up with church planting. And so we as church leaders have to be prepared, as difficult as it is. Let's just call it what it is. I can give you the nice Christian answer, to be honest with you. Oh yes, let's just release people to other churches. No, that's not that simple. We all know as church leaders that we can give the nice little pat answer. Then behind the scenes we're going, are you kidding me? They were my best leader, or they're my best worship leader. But I think I believe that if we posture ourselves towards the kingdom of heaven and not our own kingdoms, we'll be prepared to release people and bless them to go and serve and give their lives to it. Because I believe if we don't, then we're standing in the way of what God is doing.
If another church planter or group of people are saying, we want to plant a church, the best thing you can do is support them. And find the way that you need to support them. Ask the Spirit, like, Holy Spirit, how can we show support? Is it through prayer? Is it through resources? Is it through people? Do you commission off a few people from your community to say that have the heartbeat for church planting and say, hey, I've got a worship leader that you desperately need? Who's in your group of people, in your circle as a church, that you can unify with this church plant that might be going down the street, where they're going to be meeting in a high school or in someone's garage or someone's home? I think that's beautiful.